The year is 1945. The place is Europe. The situation is a total collapse. The Nazi Third Reich is burning. Allied soldiers are marching through the streets of Berlin. The concentration camps are being opened, and the world is finally seeing the true faces of the monsters who ran them. The world wanted justice. They wanted the men responsible for the most horrific crimes in history to stand trial. But as the police and soldiers searched the bunkers and the hidden forest homes, they found something terrifying. The chairs were still warm. The coffee cups were still on the tables. But the men were gone. High-ranking officers, doctors who did terrible experiments, and the architects of the Holocaust had vanished into thin air. They didn't just run, they followed a secret, invisible map. They used a system of escape routes that stretched from the heart of Germany, through the snowy mountains of the Alps, down to the sunny ports of Italy, and across the ocean to Argentina. This was the Ratlines. This is the story of how the world's most wanted monsters escaped the hangman's noose and started new lives while the world was still mourning. It is a story of fake names, secret disguises, and a trail of breadcrumbs that took decades to follow. What is a ratline? The word ratline sounds dirty, and that makes sense. Long ago, sailors used the word to mean a rope ladder that helped them climb the side of a ship. But after World War II, the word took on a much darker meaning. In 1945, Germany lost the war, and the Nazi government fell apart. Many important Nazis were wanted for serious war crimes. To avoid being arrested, secret escape paths were created. These paths were called ratlines. The name compared Nazis to rats running away from a sinking ship. The ship was Nazi Germany, and the rats were leaders trying to disappear. Ratlines were not secret tunnels underground. They were made of people helping other people. The system included safe houses, churches and monasteries, fake ID papers, and helpers willing to hide fugitives. Priests, supporters, and secret helpers moved Nazis from place to place, often across borders, without being noticed by police or Allied soldiers. Because of these ratlines, many Nazis escaped Europe and fled to places like South America. These routes helped them avoid trials and punishment. The ratlines were hidden, well-organized, and very effective, making them one of the most controversial escape systems in modern history. The first stop, the Alps. The escape almost always began with a journey south. Nazi officers knew they could not stay in Germany or Austria for long. To survive, they had to disappear. The first step was to erase who they looked like. Silver-trimmed uniforms were burned or buried, replaced with the plain clothes of farmers, laborers, or displaced refugees. The goal was to blend in completely. Their route led into the Alps, crossing the harsh mountain passes between Austria and Italy. This dangerous path was known as the Green Bridge. It was not a single road, but a loose network of trails, forests, and mountain routes that avoided towns and checkpoints. They moved mostly at night. During the day, they hid in barns, caves, or safe houses. Main roads were avoided at all costs because Allied soldiers were stopping travelers and checking identification papers. One mistake could mean arrest or worse. Reaching Italy was a turning point. Once across the mountains, the fugitives were much harder to trace. Italy became the gateway to the next stage of escape. If they made it through the Alps, they were already halfway to freedom. The Vatican connection. One of the most controversial figures connected to the ratlines was Alois Hudal. He was a high-ranking Catholic bishop living in Rome during and after World War II. Unlike many church leaders, Hudal openly expressed sympathy for the Nazi Party and its ideology. Hudal believed that many former Nazi officers were not criminals, but anti-communists who had fought what he saw as a greater threat. In his mind, they deserved protection and a second chance. Using his position and influence, he helped hide these men inside monasteries and convents across Italy, places unlikely to be searched by Allied authorities. He also helped arrange false identity papers and travel documents, allowing fugitives to move quietly toward escape routes leading out of Europe. Hudal openly defended his actions later, claiming his mission was to save these men from what he called vengeful justice. He believed the post-war trials were driven by revenge rather than fairness. To the victims of Nazi crimes, Hudal's actions were unforgivable. They saw him as a man who helped war criminals escape punishment. But to Hudal himself, his work was righteous. He believed he was carrying out a holy duty, protecting men he felt were being unfairly hunted. His role remains one of the darkest and most debated chapters in the history of the ratlines. The Red Cross identity theft. Leaving Europe was very hard. To cross an ocean, a person needed official travel papers. For well-known Nazis like Adolf Eichmann, using a real name was impossible. He was already wanted for serious war crimes. This is where the ratlines found a dangerous weakness. After World War II, millions of people had lost their homes. Families were separated, important records were destroyed, and many refugees had no passports. To help these people, the International Red Cross gave out special travel papers. These documents were meant to help people with no country move somewhere safe and start over. The ratlines abused this system. Nazi fugitives used fake names and said they were homeless refugees with no nationality. They gave photos and made up personal details. Since the Red Cross was focused on helping people, not catching criminals, many of these lies were accepted. Because of this, war criminals received real and legal travel documents with official stamps and photos, but under new names. Adolf Eichmann, for example, traveled using the name Ricardo Clement. With these papers, Nazis could board ships, cross borders, and disappear into new lives in places like South America. Something meant to help victims of war was turned into a way to escape justice. This misuse of Red Cross papers became one of the most shocking and troubling parts of the Ratlines system. The port of Genoa. Once the fugitives had their fake passports and often wore priests' robes to avoid suspicion, they headed for Genoa, Italy. This city was the final gateway, the exit door out of Europe. Genoa was one of the busiest ports in the Mediterranean, crowded with ships, sailors, officials, and thousands of real refugees trying to escape the ruins of war. That chaos worked in their favor. In the crowds along the docks, it was easy to disappear. The men stayed in safe houses near the port, sometimes for weeks, waiting for a ship bound for South America. Argentina, Brazil, and other countries were common destinations. When a ship was ready, they boarded quietly. Often, these were normal passenger vessels, not secret military transports. They sat on deck or in cabins beside families who had lost homes, loved ones, and futures because of the war. No one knew that some of these quiet passengers were men responsible for enormous suffering. As the ships pulled away from Genoa's harbor, the fugitives left Europe behind. With new names and clean papers, they vanished into the world. For many of them, this was the last step of the Ratline, and the moment justice slipped through history's fingers. Why Argentina? Why did they all go to Argentina? Because the president of Argentina at the time, Juan Perón, wanted them there. He admired the German military and wanted their scientists and engineers to help build his country. He sent secret agents to Europe to tell the Nazis, "You are welcome here." Argentina became a safe zone where the monsters could walk the streets, go to the cinema, and even keep their old military medals in their desk drawers. Adolf Eichmann, the architect's flight. Adolf Eichmann was the man who organized the trains that took millions to the camps. He was the world's most wanted man. He used the Ratline perfectly. He hid as a forest worker in Germany, then used the Italy route to get to Buenos Aires in 1950. He lived a quiet life, working at a Mercedes-Benz factory. He thought he was safe. He thought the world had forgotten, but justice has a long memory. Josef Mengele, the angel of death. Perhaps the most monster-like figure was Josef Mengele, the doctor from Auschwitz. He also used the Ratlines to reach South America. He lived in Argentina, then Paraguay, and finally Brazil. Unlike Eichmann, he was never caught. He lived in constant fear, always looking over his shoulder, but he died of old age while swimming at a beach. His escape is the greatest failure of the post-war hunt for justice. The Odessa legend. You might have heard of Odessa, a massive secret organization of SS officers who ran the Ratlines with millions of dollars in stolen gold. While there were secret groups, historians say the Ratlines were actually much more disorganized. It wasn't one giant group. It was a lot of small, separate people, some priests, some spies, some old soldiers, working together in bits and pieces. The reality was less like a movie and more like a messy, dark secret. The Mossad Hunt, 1960. The story of the Ratlines has a cinematic ending for some. In 1960, the Israeli Secret Service discovered where Adolf Eichmann was hiding. They didn't ask the government for help. They sent a team of secret agents to kidnap him. They grabbed him on his way home from work, drugged him, dressed him as a flight attendant, and smuggled him out of Argentina on a plane. He was taken to Israel, put on trial, and finally faced the consequences of his actions. The Ratlines remain one of the most painful chapters of the war. They show us that while the fighting ended in 1945, the battle for truth went on for decades. Thousands of men who committed terrible crimes got away. They raised families, they grew old, and they died without ever saying sorry. They were helped by people who should have known better, priests, politicians, and regular citizens who chose to look the other way. This story matters today because it teaches us that justice isn't automatic. If we don't look for the truth will stay hidden in the tunnels of history. It leaves us with a haunting question. How many people in our own neighborhoods today are hiding a dark past behind a fake name? The monsters of the past are mostly gone now, but the paths they took are still there, etched into the map of the world. Do you think the people who helped the Nazis escape should have been put in jail too? Let me know in the comments. If you want to dive deeper into the secret history of World War II, hit that subscribe button. The truth is out there, we just have to find it.